I'm going to hit record right away. I was wondering, like, obviously you're used to doing podcasts. I know Jacob Kelly interviewed you a couple times.
Yeah.
And he's a boy of mine. In terms of like recording with Zoom, have you found it pretty good?
Yeah, I found it great. I mean,
Okay.
especially I'm used to doing them in person, like, non-quarantine, but
Yeah.
I like Zoom, man. Like, honestly, I think the fact that production cost is zero, beautiful thing. And it just saves straight to your desktop, it's good. Can't ask for any more, right?
Yeah, it's huge. And that's why I asked, because I know that he was recommending Zencaster in terms of like really good audio. So
Got it.
he and I actually cut one last week, and I was like, we used Zencaster, but we used the video from Zoom, which was cool. But it's like, I don't want to be bringing guests on and having them go through a million steps, you know?
Right. I was just going to say, there should be a level of wanting to make it as easy as possible on the guest. And
Yeah.
everybody obviously has Zoom by default now. So
Yeah. And this sounds good to me. So, I mean, let's just roll with it.
let's do it.
My fear is always like, you do a good episode and it's like, oh, I lost the audio.
Oh, yeah. It's the scariest thing ever. Like when I record, in real life, we always double or triple record it. We have the normal mics, we have a table mic, we have the camera mic, and sometimes we also put a lav mic.
That's
So
what I mean. And that's like, my background is video, and that's exactly what I would
yeah.
do. So like right now I'm looking down at the bottom. I'm like, all right, it looks like it's recording.
Yeah, no, there's really the only way I've like thought about doing backup is having an extra person on the call and them recording as well.
Yeah, you could do that. I mean, the way that we did it, if you are looking for a solution, it does work. Like if you open Zencaster, because that's free. If you
Yeah,
open Zencaster, you can just hit record. And even if the internet cuts out, then you'll have that,
interesting.
right? Because it will record on your laptop,
Yeah,
but you just have the audio.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll check
All
it
right.
out.
So, I mean, obviously, I'll put an intro at the beginning of this thing, but in terms of what you do, because there's so many things, how would you explain yourself to people?
Are we recording?
Yeah.
I would explain
But you don't
myself.
have to, like, it doesn't matter if you
I
have
would
different
explain.
answers, you know?
Yeah, so I think it's like how I always explain it is I break it down by a couple different pieces. So like the main pillar piece is my personal brand. So my personal brand, and underneath that falls my podcast, and it follows all of my personal content. Underneath that falls my businesses as well, which are Hoopsnation, which is my version of what I want a basketball media platform to be, for the demographic, by that same demographic, all the meme content, the highlights, stuff that I'm enjoying consuming more than anything else. And then I judge that based off the performance of some of that stuff. And then off the side of that, so that's TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, 20 plus posts per day on each of the platforms. And then underneath that is kind of like where I do some of the more, it happens because of Hoops Nation, but it couldn't happen without my personal brand, the consulting that I do. So helping, like-minded brands and individuals, run their social and are able to do, some of the things that they want, getting the eyeballs that they want, and making it fun and, socially optimized. So then there's that, and then there's speaking stuff that I do, as well as some of the work with music labels, both through Hoops Nation and on the personal side, helping majority hip hop artists distribute their songs across social. It's kind of a combination of all those things, and then I'm involved in a couple other weird things. Like I'm super into sports cards right now, so I have a whole subsidiary underneath Hoops Nation called Cards Nation, where I'm going pretty. I always have cards right by my side. So I've been getting pretty interested in that lately. But yeah, I'd say it's kind of an amalgamation of all of that. But if there's anything you want to dive deeper in, for sure.
Well, I think the cards is cool. I've seen some of the lives. I
Yeah.
think it's neat. It's definitely a cool direction to take it in. Yeah, I mean, we can jump down rabbit holes for sure. Um, that just made me think of Eminem. Because I know hip hop's a big part of the culture and stuff that you work with. Did you kind of miss Eminem in terms of like somebody you look up to in high school, or like was that a different generation for you?
Yeah, I'm too young, I think. Like I remember like I was young on when he was dropping like, Berserk. Like, like I missed it.
Yeah.
Like obviously you can go back and review the tapes, but it's not the same as everybody talking about it and playing it nonstop. Um, I remember when that came out though. Like I have a couple memories of like where I was when that happened. But apart from that, I don't really have any Eminem attachment. It's more like Drake, like 2010, 11, 12, 13. Drake was like my, beginning of like youth listening to like music on my own.
And why do you think, in that case, Drake is someone that really spoke to you as an artist, or like why did you enjoy that?
I think it was the first music that I listened to where I was like, yeah, this is cool. Like before that, I was listening to what like cousins gave me on like they happen to have on their phones. So they put it on my iPod. So I didn't, I just wasn't, nobody in my family listened to it. Nobody in my extended family listened to it. So I had no attachment. The only way I found out about it in the first place was through must have been like my seventh or eighth grade basketball team,
Yeah.
and that's what they're listening to. So it's like, all right, I got to check this guy out. And I don't even know how I got the music because I don't think streaming platforms were a thing yet back then. Maybe from YouTube. I don't know how I was listening to the music, but maybe I bought the album on iTunes. Um, Probably like Take Care era. Uh, and that was kind of it. Definitely still love listening to those. Brings me back.
Yeah. It's cool. Well, I think for in terms of the audience, I know that your story is well documented. If people haven't heard kind of your upbringing and your business life and those kinds of things, there's tons of episodes I can point them to. So I hope we can maximize your time and value for the audience by going somewhat rapid fire questions that might really
Sure.
help them in practical terms. And one thing that I'm building my work on is three educational leaders, I guess, and that's Brene Brown, Carol Dweck, and Seth Godin. So to start with,
Do you know my Seth story?
I do, yeah.
Oh, okay, good,
It's
good.
good though.
I
It's a
love
good
Seth.
story. Do you want to tell it?
Yeah, Seth is the first person that told me I wasn't going to go to college. That's kind of like the crux of it. But I didn't even think that was a possibility. And Seth was like, if I had to guess, like casually, he was like, if I had to guess, you're not going to go to college. And I was like, what? And then he ended up being very correct. So, shouts out to Seth.
Yeah. And so for me, I followed his work for long before that, even. And it's always been a struggle for me to package what he professes in terms of stop stealing dreams, right? Like that's my favorite quote of his, is the idea of not stealing dreams from youth. And that's why I can only imagine how that conversation went. He would have been so supportive and he gets it, right? But a lot of youth have no idea what the heck we're talking about if we try and help other kids like you um, with that idea of being able to dream big and go after their goals. How realistic do you think that is for other people too?
I think it's super realistic. I think, especially in your youth, that's the best time to execute on stuff. And I understand you have school and you have this and you have that, but you have one thing that nobody else in the world has, and that is no overhead. You have no overhead when you're super young, and that's really a beautiful thing. And I think it gives you a lot of room to execute.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest reasons that I find that you struggle with that, in my experience, is a lack of willingness to be vulnerable. And that's the other person whose work I look up to a lot is Brene Brown. And she teaches that vulnerability, like put yourself out there and just do things, right? Just try things. And so um, obviously you're good at that. Do you think that was somewhat natural, or did you have to grow into being able to um, figure those things out, dealing with the haters, dealing with bullies?
I was always just so enamored with being able to try that I didn't really like it didn't like because I, in part like understood where they were coming from because most of like the quote unquote hate that was directed at me was just like, who's this 13-year-old kid with braces telling me why LeBron is the GOAT? It's like I get it. I can't deny how ridiculous that seems on paper, so I understand that, but I was just having fun. Like I'm not gonna stop having fun, especially when I understand where they're coming from. And
Mm-hmm.
I like in part agree. Like if I saw some, I would think the same thing. I wouldn't say it obviously, but I'd be like, that's abnormal. Uh, you know?
Yeah.
So I uh I can't blame anybody. It's not like anybody was coming at me saying, for the most part, saying anything insane. It was mostly just about, not taking me seriously.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of, there still is that, um, but, but yeah, I was really just in love with it. And I think people have to just find their own version of that, like find what you're really in love with and, you know, just do it and you'll come out on top, especially when you put in the time.
Yeah. I think it's definitely a fascinating thing. And if we could bottle whatever the answer is, then we'd be billionaires many times over. And not only that, a lot of youth mental health and a lot of kids would be more successful, I think. Figuring out how for other people how to see that and do it instead of suffering, because maybe they know that they love singing, but they're not willing to try it because they're scared. But that brings me to my next question. It's clear that you have a lot of empathy for people, and I know you've talked openly about um, not being a fan of drugs and alcohol and those kinds of things. But what I appreciate that you've said is that you've said you understand why other people do it, because I teach youth with severe addictions in one of the units that I work at, and so I see that it doesn't discriminate, right? I see why people go down that route. But what do you think? Because this is one of my big whys for me is, what do you think we could do earlier on in people's lives to try and help them not go down that route?
Yeah, something that I think it goes back to like, how do we help the youth on like just discovering their passion and executing on that side. I think everybody at a very young age knows what they love. And most people don't think that they know what they love, but the truth of the matter is whatever you spend the most time doing, that's what you love. Turn it into a business. Try. So I think that is the answer. You help, like, so he's into video games, all right, teach him how to turn it into a business, teach him how to
Yeah.
stream, teach him how to do this and that. It's not like 1973, where you have to work at McDonald's, like teach the kid how to stream. Like you can do it off of any school computer. Like you can, like there are ways to get around everything. So I think it's more just being supportive of the time that we're in and the passions that kids have, and leading them down that path. Because the reason why I look at drugs and alcohol and things like that in the way that I do is just because I don't think it helps with your efficiency. Like that's like, apart from it being bad for you and it hurting your health, like it's not efficient. And at the end of the day, if something is efficient or is not efficient, but you have to make the conscious decision to go the efficient route if you want to do well in whatever endeavor you want to do. So I think it's really just about putting people in a position where they have a goal at the end where they can always go the efficient route.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. You went all Mamba mentality on me there, and I had a Kobe question queued up for later, obviously, because it's been a crazy year. But I know that that's
Got my
something I've heard
Kobe
him say
sweatshirt
many
on.
times. Is that sick? That's nice, and the sleeve too.
Yes.
Um,
24 there and 2 on this one.
that's awesome. Where's that from? Is that
It's a company called the Hoopery, and they sent it to me, so I'm more than happy to show them love.
of course. Um, he's often spoke about that you don't have to tell a kid what they're good at, right? Or what they're interested in. But so often
Mhm.
it gets beaten out of them. Um, so one of the other big things that he talks about is the idea of persistence and resilience in the face of your dreams and goals, like looking at the big ass mountain and being willing to take the first steps, but also the 100th step and stuff like that. I think when a lot of people look at your work, they're going to see success and they're going to see all the W's, but not the L's, maybe. And what do you have to say about the importance of persistence, even once you've found your passion?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an element of doing it for the right reasons. Um, like when I first started on Facebook or whatever, I was doing it for a year every single day, and I had 500 followers. So it's like I did it just because I enjoyed it. I didn't do it, like getting 1 million followers on Instagram was my goal when I joined Instagram after I had already been doing it for 3 years.
Right.
Like there was definitely my goal from the beginning was to have like enjoy the process of building it. And I think teaching that the process is more fun than the end result anyways, like I'm now coming up and like TikTok, the Hoopsnation TikTok way surpassed the Instagram, and that's at like 2.5 million, but the Instagram is almost at 1 million, which was my original goal. And to be honest, like it's nothing different, and I'm like at the goal, like it's about to be achieved, and the fun part was getting there. So I think that's what has to be preached.
Yeah, that's true. I think making sure that you actually intrinsically enjoy it is so important. You mentioned TikTok.
Like, real quick, like when the kids that we're talking about starts like streaming when they have no viewers, like enjoy it, because one day you won't have no viewers.
So one question I get a lot is if after 2 months I don't think I enjoy it, should I stick with it, or is it a good sign that I should go find another thing?
What was the first part of the question?
So if after 2 months I'm questioning giving up, should I go
Do
look
you
at some,
still do you
try
still enjoy
something
it
else?
though? Because that's the question on my end. Like, do you enjoy, like, do you have fun doing it? If the answer is yes, then yes. If the answer is no, you don't enjoy it anymore, then the answer is no. You got to find the next thing that you enjoy and bounce from thing you enjoy until you enjoy it forever or for a 10-year period, so you can actually build something substantial, because that requires time. Like nothing, worthy is going to happen in 6 months.
So I know on that note, Jocko Willink talks a lot about when we pursue our passions, there will be times where there's things we're not going to enjoy about it, right? Unless we have the money to just outsource things or what have you. Um, do you think that it is possible that you enjoy pretty much the majority of the work if you find that right thing?
Yeah, I think majority. There will always be pieces, like aspects of it. Like, you know, I'm sure there's somebody out there, but like doing the finance side, like the structure and the taxes for your business, like that is not, what most people would imagine fun, especially since that is just an additive to what comes with whatever business you're doing. But I think you can definitely enjoy 75+% of what you're doing if it's something you really love.
That's cool. I like putting a number on it because it allows people to do that sort of life audit. You mentioned TikTok, so let's talk clout for a second.
Oh
You,
God.
no, I mean, the reason I ask is listen, like, I don't have a podcast at the time of this recording that's
Mhm.
published. I will.
Wow, that's
I'm,
awesome.
I'm going to, surpass that whole everyone gives up after 7 episodes thing. Why did you take this interview?
I for a couple of reasons. One is I love having my thoughts documented, especially when it's not that much work on my end. So, like, for example, like on my podcast, it's mostly documenting the thoughts of other people, because it is a conversation. There's a lot of me in there, but I'm me, so and the guest normally isn't asking me questions, so it's usually coming from the same perspective on my end. But when I go on other podcasts, it comes from somebody else's perspective, and I think that brings out something new from a thought standpoint. And then the fact that that's going to be out there on the internet for anybody to discover, I really like. Two, everybody's a different audience than me, and three, kind of back to one, I want to be able to call back on it for like video use in like 5 years. That's really why. And you seem like an awesome dude, so I was obviously happy, especially getting this podcast off the ground to come on, and I'll be excited to promote it as well.
I appreciate that. I mean, I think collaboration is definitely something that you've brought up in other interviews. And maybe that's a similar answer, but when I ask you about collaboration, why do you think collaborating as opposed to going yourself is so important?
I think from a growth standpoint, you have to do it. You have to branch into other audiences, and help them, and hopefully that's reciprocated. Um, it's just, I don't really put too much thought into it, just because of how much I believe it's a necessity, um, because it's one or both. Like, it's, you do it on your own and you collaborate, or you just do it on your own. And it's a no-brainer, in my opinion, to uh, put yourself out to an audience of other people.
For sure. So I think that ties into kind of having underdogs like me being able to work with people who are already successful like you. And while I agree with everything you said, there are certain people who will kind of not jump on this because it's like, well, let me know once you have however many downloads a month or whatever. So that brings up the idea of the underdog in my mind. And this is who I teach on the daily, because I go into jails, addictions facilities, mental health hospitals, teen moms, homeless, group homes. That's the youth that I work with. Now, in terms of what you've talked about before, having those teen years without overhead as the opportunity to establish in the ability to make not just millions, but tens of millions. I've heard you say it on a few podcasts, like that goal. If I put you in my shoes, I walk into a jail and ask a kid what his passion is, and he tells me it's to be a rap artist or to be a streamer gaming Call of Duty, whatever, it doesn't matter, but he wants to do that. What is kind of the workflow, if you were in my shoes, that you would take him through from starting to finishing building that actual dream?
Yeah, so let's say it's a really good question. Let's say it's somebody who wants to be a rapper, right? Who doesn't have anything but wants to do that. What first thing I would do is I would have that person pay like really close attention. Do they have like a smartphone? Because I think that's the barrier to entry. So let's say they have a smartphone. Doesn't matter what it is, but something that records. I would first thing I would do is have them study the market if they want to be doing like rap. So like pay actual attention to like the Drake and the Travis Scott and like the Lil Baby, like the Gunna, like the Roddy Rich, like whoever is popping, like pay attention to like them and like their lyrics and how their stuff is done. And then the next thing I would do is I would have them start writing. Like I would have them start writing and just taking super basic instrumentals and voice memo recording and uploading it on SoundCloud, make it like 60 seconds of, let's say the dude's name is like his rap name is like Jack J. So Jack J is now going to do 30-second bars 3 times a day, and he's going to take the audio and put it on his Instagram and Snapchat and all that. And once he gets 100 followers, he's going to find somebody else with 100 followers, and he's going to do a song with them. And then when he's at 200 followers, he's gonna find somebody with 200 followers that he likes. And he's gonna do a song with him, and it just starts happening like that for somebody that's willing to put in that work. And I think the barrier of entry really is just a phone. Like you just need a phone. Um, so that would be my example of what I would do if I was in your position talking to him and he wants to be a rapper.
And that's something that Seth Godin talks a lot about, right? Just continually ratcheting it up until you can get that leverage and stuff.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, you get lucky and you get or not lucky, you work for it, but you're able to hit somebody a lot higher, and you get that big collab, and it's over.
Yeah. I think they often get wrapped up in that sort of business side of how am I going to bring money in? How am I going to pay bills? And I know Gary, obviously, is one of the people that you've looked up to over the years too, in terms of Gary Vee. He talks a lot about that idea of whoever can hold their breath the longest in business is going to win.
Mm-hmm.
Versus there are a lot of people, and I can appreciate that there are bills to pay. In terms of where do you lie on that argument about trying to build business monetization streams and revenue at some point versus just continuing to create?
I think like the reason I love the school example so much and like youth is because there's no overhead. You don't have to. Um, and then you can allocate all time in the day like I did. Like during class, I didn't pay attention to school. So I was just in class doing the other stuff. And then when I was out of class, I was doing the other stuff. But for somebody who does have to do has to work a little bit, do that. And then in the time that you do have, allocate it to it. That's really where I lie. I would never want somebody to not be able to survive, to chase their passion. But I do think you can do both. And in terms of like holding your breath for a long time, once you're like starting to build up, yeah, I believe in that. I believe in not forcing money to come, like not doing things that are spammy or don't fit the brand that you're trying to build, just for a quick dollar at the beginning. It's worth holding out and then selling out your merch, doing something that's organic. It's just worth it.
Yeah, that's true. And another thing that I borrow from Gary that I'd love your insight in is he talks a lot about not necessarily having a niche. In fact, this year he's gone super passionate on like, you don't need a niche. Your niche is you, and it becomes you if you're willing to be authentically you. Now, you started with a basketball brand, pretty specific. I know it
Mm-hmm.
bounced to other sports, back to basketball. Where do you lie on the argument? Because I hear a lot of people saying, like constantly, oh, I'm struggling to find what my niche is, and I'm struggling to niche down.
I always try to do the opposite. Like I think if you do start out in a niche like I did with basketball, great. You build a super strong core around a subject that you're passionate about, and I always will be passionate about basketball. But then you start to create these other things like I did for my podcast and like the sports cards and doing all these different things that like, all right, now there are 4 niches. And then in a year there'll be 10 niches and then 20 niches. And then all of a sudden you're the Rock and you appeal to everybody. Like the Rock doesn't have a niche. What is the Rock's niche?
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I don't know him well, but maybe kindness.
Right. Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can empathize. It's so new for me in this space, and I almost made my handle no niche or something like that because like I was just trying to stress like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see. So going back to those early days for you though, it was a blog, and I know that you struggled with dyslexia and ADD, and I can relate so much to the idea of not paying attention at all in school. And all the kids that I see in mainstream schools, like it's the same thing for them. How do you feel about written word and blogging today when people say like maybe blogging's dead or those kinds of things?
I definitely think there is value in really good writers, especially right now, because not a lot of people are doing it. Not a lot of people are interested. Everybody's focused on memes and videos and stuff like that. I think in the future, really good writers, bloggers will hold a lot more value because it flipped. Like 4 years ago, if you asked me like what's like which is more valuable, like somebody on social media or like a really good writer, I would say a really good writer, and that flipped. So that means it's gonna flip back.
Yeah, the pendulum swings.
Definitely
Um,
does.
all right. So to me, this is kind of like the moment you've all been waiting for time, because I think getting into sports a little bit would be cool. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's a big passion of yours. Why is hockey better than basketball?
Terrible question. It isn't, and I've never played hockey. I've never, although one thing I will say, I've never been. Actually, I've been to one hockey game, but it was kind of as a joke because it was an Islanders game, and everybody in so ridiculous. This one Islanders game every year at Barclays Center. Everybody dresses up as referees, and I was one of them, got put on the ref shirt, stood up in the top section, and everybody goes in a ref shirt and cheers for the refs instead of one of the teams. So when the refs come out, everybody goes crazy. Whenever they make a call, everybody's going crazy. That is really my one main experience with hockey. It was fun, but yeah,
That's funny.
that's it. Oh,
Well,
basketball over hockey. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. I get it. um, but I think there's so many parallels, comparisons you can draw between sports and so much in life. Growing up as an athlete, for me, that was the case. Do you think there's a lot that people could learn about business from sports?
Uh, from the business of sports, yes. And I definitely think from certain things, like, just how much time you have to put in, like the basic stuff that makes an athlete. But from an actual like core business that like standpoint, yeah, I do think it's mostly from the business end of sports.
Right, in terms of marketing and branding.
Yeah, no,
I know.
totally.
Did you get early access to the Bulls documentary?
I didn't. I wish I did, man. That would be amazing.
Maybe they'll think of you for the next one. But in the doc, Michael says that the shot was one of those moments where it really gave him the confidence to like know that he could succeed, which I think is crazy to hear Michael Jordan say. Um, when we're trying to give youth or anybody really entering the world of their passions, um, how important are those moments where you build confidence?
Oh, super. And I think that's, you just got to put people, like, if you're trying to help people find that, you have to put them in positions where they can succeed, you know, and also get better. So it's like, it's a combination of putting them in a position that they'll do well, but also giving them the challenge of, competing against people a lot better than you, because that's how you actually become good.
For sure. And earlier, when I mentioned educators that I look up to, Carol Dweck with Growth Mindset is one of them. You've talked openly about not fitting in maybe to the high school stuff per se, but I don't know if you noticed this, but you mentioned learning in so many of your interviews. So, what do you think some tips for people to learn would be in your mind?
Uh, in a 2020 world, just explore. Every piece of information is online. That's why, like, right now, to me, college, like, I don't understand college right now, because all the information that you're being, like, the one thing that I'm like, okay, college is good, is, okay, you're around cool people and you're in person and you're creating like quality relationships and you're having fun and you're learning. I get it. That's fine. It's not for me. It's not for a lot of people, but I get it. I don't get you paying $100,000 a year to learn, to be taught information that you could easily discover online on your own, from home. I don't get it.
Yeah.
And that's why I think colleges are.
So I can't even play devil's advocate because I agree with you. But what I can do, because I'm around it all the time, is bring up why other people say it's so important. is because they don't believe that youth can find those resources, or that so many of them struggle and they need someone to curate for them.
I think it comes back to money. They just want more money. Money, money, money.
I'm
And
talking parents and teachers
oh,
and people at the high school level who are trying to support them. And part of that for me, this isn't my interview, but part of that for me is I know that they don't know any different, these adults, right? Like the adults don't know any
yeah.
different. They're doing what they know how to help them, or how they think they're helping. But what I was going to leave this for later, but like to me, that's a huge question. Whether we bring in the Kobe Mamba mentality stuff around learning, or Seth Godin, your experience, what do you think we could do to help guide them to find those resources?
I think we have to teach a couple things. Number one, we have to teach networking. Like networking should be a class in like third grade. Like you should teach how to properly network in today's world, because for me, nobody taught me that, but I just fortunately discovered it on my own through the internet. But you can connect with anybody. You can connect with like-minded. You can learn things from other people. That is a skill that should really be hammered down, and taught from a young age. So I think that's a big one. And they also have to teach you how to discover stuff on your own. Like there should be, like honestly, there should be, uh, you know, $100 lists that, show you that are like linked up to like where you can learn about this, and this. And all right, cool. You paid $100 for somebody to do the work for you. Great. And then you're able to discover everything on that course that you would have on your own time, when you're not working on that other passion. Like I'm thinking about taking like an online, like doing research on like online accounting, because I want to understand that, because I think it's valuable, and that's not guest appearance, and that's not something that I'm going to learn from social media, but I also don't think I have to learn it from a college.
Yeah.
So it's just teaching people that is a possibility, because currently it's not even taught as an option.
Yeah, it's huge. And I stepped down from being a principal because it's been my life goal and life's work to figure the answer to that out. Because I know it's possible. It's just the logistics around it. And I think we're on the right path. Um,
Definitely on the right path.
yeah. Like my original goal 2 years ago was YouTube. It was like, well, let's just use YouTube. But then it's like when it's free and it's also so wide, people get lost. They get lost in an ocean. And I don't mean me, the creator. I mean people trying to find it. I think the big value is how do we help support these youth around the world really into these support systems. You got me off on a tangent now.
No, I love it. I appreciate hearing that, especially from your standpoint, which is very different and much more experienced than mine. So I enjoy hearing it.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. We'll get there. Um, yeah, so in sports, I think we all have a couple things. We have people that we look up to in terms of heroes, for one. So who are some of those people for you?
Oh, it's a couple of things. One, it's the guys that I'm buying their sports cards. So guys that are like partial investments, I'm just like, woo. But it's also like the LeBrons, the Kobe's, the Jordans, the guys that to me are what like greatness is. Like, I never looked up to like presidents that way. I never looked up to like business people that way. It was always just like I want to be LeBron, you know. Like I was never. There's nobody else that like it was like LeBron and then Carmelo, because I'm a huge Knicks fan. And like Amari Stoudemire and like all these old Knicks. It was like those were the guys that I just wanted to be. Like there's nobody else that I want to be. Um, so I think those are some of the things, and it's funny because I don't like nowadays. I don't like only some of those guys, if they're still around, I'll still like respect them a lot, but I don't look up to them in the same way. And for a lot of the younger players, like I know a lot of them, and they're just like me. They're just normal dudes that play video games and play basketball. They're just much taller than I am and much better than I am.
Yeah, fair. But you'll still drop some points in the All-Star game someday.
One day, yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, so obviously we got another guest appearance. Uncle, you can say hi quick. Quick.
Hey.
Yeah, snappy.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think again, a lot of people would just see that success for you. What keeps you so motivated at this point?
I think it's a couple of things. One is just wanting to expand and make things more efficient. Um, and I really do think that's most of it, actually. I think it's wanting to like cut down on the time that I'm spending on each thing, because right now I'm spending all day on everything. But I want to be able to get it like a lot of stuff outsourced so that I don't have to do that. So I'm really looking forward to when that's up and running, because then I'll be able to be like, I'll just be able to spend time on other things. I can't hear you right now. Can you hear me?
There we go. Better?
Yep, better.
My daughter was having a little screaming fit, so I hit the mute button quick.
Gotcha.
It's tough times working from home.
No, I understand. I
But
definitely
it's good.
hear that.
She's a cool kid.
Awesome.
Very short story is that she was actually born from a teen mom who was homeless and drug addicted.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we took her in 6 years ago. It's crazy.
That's amazing.
It's fun times. Yeah, okay, that's awesome. So we talked about all that already. I don't do a ton
that's
of
awesome.
yeah. It's true. When you do that thing, right? Like there's a whole bunch, I think learning and Mamba mentality and these things. So I guess a little bit of technical stuff when it comes to supporting business and social media would be good to kind of just go rapid fire at some of those questions if you have time for it.
Yeah.
So and we talked about that already too. We're crushing it. Oh yeah. Okay. So business is always about evolution, not like those one-time wins. You started on Facebook, but then it's evolved. Where do you see Facebook today in terms of business strategy?
I think it's a lot better now than it was 2 years ago. Because when I left Facebook, right, I was doing, I had videos that were getting 50 million views, and all of a sudden, can't get 10,000 views because they diluted organic reach to where you couldn't get any viewers. Your own followers couldn't see your own posts because they were prioritizing the feed for advertisers. So unless you were spending money, nobody was going to see anything. So I was like, okay, let me go somewhere else. So I went to Snapchat and then Instagram and now TikTok. But I think Facebook is great. I use it just through cross posting, and stuff is doing well again somehow. I don't know how, but it's doing well. And I just, whenever I post on Instagram, it cross posts on Facebook. I don't even go on to the Facebook app.
So still can be valuable in terms of if somebody was starting a business, still using it.
Totally.
Okay, let's talk live stream for a second, because I know that's a lot of what you do. Why do you like live stream?
Unfiltered. Takes down if you put out a video, right? So like my podcast, for example, it exchanges hands like 4 times before anybody sees it, and it's like a lot of back and forth and a lot of time and an edit, and like I question the edit and I question it. So I hate that, first and foremost. So I love live streaming for that. But also my background's in broadcasting. Broadcasting is very live. So I just love just talking to people and engaging people and talking in live action. And I can't wait for Instagram to improve their live streaming functions. TikTok has it great. Twitch has it great. Facebook has it good. I love that they added donations for charities on Instagram Live. I think that was a really big step. but I think their next step is going to be adding it for creators as well. So they can have a Twitch model, where people actually spend long times and make shows around it, because I think live content is the best content. I really believe that, because it's just a different level of connection to it. But certain things obviously should be recorded and edited, but not necessarily everything.
Yeah, I've always appreciated it. I've always wanted to do it. And so 4 weeks ago, every Thursday night, I started going live, and I just bring guests on that want to talk about this kind of stuff, right? Chasing their dreams, goal setting, whatever. And each week it's gotten a little bit better. I do want to ask about the technical side, though. The first week, I had a whole bunch of cameras set up, trying to broadcast to every platform. Then I kind of was like, no, let's just keep it simple. Went Facebook and Instagram, but when you bring a guest on, then the people on Facebook can't see it. So I went
Right.
just Instagram, which made it even better. Could use something like Stream Yard or Stream Park, like you can do these things. But all this to say, you tend to go live on Instagram. Do you go live on all the platforms, or where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I'll alternate. So I'll go live on just TikTok, on just Hoopsnation, then I'll go live on just Buster on Instagram, then I'll go live on just Hoopsnation on Instagram. I'm gonna get into Twitch probably soon, probably after quarantine. But yeah, I stick to one at a time. Also, out of respect for the viewers too, because I don't want to be like my eyes, like I'm talking to you, my eyes aren't on another stream, my eyes are on your
Yeah.
question. So I just think it's a respect thing as well.
Yeah, I like that. That's why I've gone to just Instagram. Even if 4 people show up, it's cool.
Super cool. It's like you're speaking to a class, bro.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's how
it's
I look
true.
at it.
You mentioned Twitch. That was one of the questions. It's always been on this kind of thought of like, because my goal, similar to what Kobe was wanting to do, is how do we bridge mainstream media and culture and learning? How do we get these together? So do you think Twitch would be a legitimate platform for that?
For bringing people together.
For being able to teach, essentially, helping people learn?
Mm, maybe. I think there are a lot of distractions on Twitch, which isn't good. But I think the idea of Twitch is, um, I think there should be a new platform, but I do like the idea of having it on a fun platform with like fun associations like Twitch. It's like, yo, I'm going on Twitch. I'm about to learn something real quick. Catch you in 30. You know, like I kind of like that instead of like, yo, I'm going on Khan Academy. It's like
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
not that like it's dope, but it's not like it doesn't have dope associations. So I do think that would be interesting. It would be interesting. I'm
Yeah.
not opposed to that. I just think the education has to be really good. It has to be like, I'm waiting for like people with insane budgets to like Game of Thrones education, bro.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's like I've said this all the time. I'm like Netflix, Amazon, these beyond venture backed things, these massive giants are leaving a lot on the table by not entering the world of education. It's like you could argue it is the biggest industry in the world. That's how you could argue that.
The only thing that everybody has to do, pretty much. I mean, apart from like food.
Yeah, for sure. Which is so, yeah. Anyways, I mean, like I said, we could talk forever about that kind of stuff. Um, One platform versus planting flags everywhere when someone's beginning on social media. What do you think?
Uh, One platform for the first month, and take that and put it elsewhere. Um, but yeah, I think you always want to be diversified on all platforms and make content for all platforms, but I don't think that necessarily needs to come at the very beginning. I was just one platform for years before I was on other platforms.
What's the best business advice you've ever been given?
I don't know if I was given this, but I just learned it and I would give it to myself, is that you know, everything takes 10 times longer than you think it will.
Yeah, that's good. I think that ties back to the persistence. Um, all right, I just got a couple questions left. So, um, I've heard you say that you want to be the biggest sports influencer in the world. Um, you might
Yeah.
already be. I don't know who. Like, I obviously that's kind of like a gray area thing. The question really
Yeah.
though is, um, why is it important to dream big versus staying small and kind of letting the world decide what you're gonna do? You know?
Yeah, I think you have to have some sort of, vision towards what, like, if you're not building for anything, then you're not building for anything. Largest sports influencer though, I don't know if I necessarily feel the same way now as when I said that. I I would that would be great, but I think the goal is more so just to have a positive impact to a very large audience, not necessarily specifically in sports, but just in general. And that's more what I'm building towards, and through a lot of mediums, and really just being able to, like one of the people I look up to that I don't talk about as much as like a Joe Rogan, for example, who did the whole podcast thing on his own and was able to talk to anybody in the world like that. That's a superpower that I value way higher than money,
Yeah.
because that's
Yeah.
learning. It's like he can learn from anybody in the world like that. He's talking about how he was just casually on the phone with Kanye asking him questions. That's a superpower. That I would rather have than $1 billion.
Yeah. And I think that's so awesome. And you hear that from a lot of people who have reached success. The youth that I'm going in and trying to support, they think of this idea of like $100,000 and it just blows their mind. And it can be hard to tell them that they don't need to, that they can value other things when they don't have money and they're not coming from it. Um, and I think it's cool to keep reminding them of that, though, that money's not everything.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it's super important.
you are really authentic and humble. I think that rings true on all the platforms and everything you put out there. Why do you think that is?
Uh, I don't know. I think I never. I think it's a couple of things. One, I think something scary that happens on social media is when somebody quote unquote blows up. I don't think that's a good thing at all. I think that is a disaster for somebody's career. I think if somebody like you just start on TikTok and you get a 25 million view video, I think that's the worst thing that could have happened to you. I
Because of
really
why?
because it creates this unsustainable level of success from the beginning, and it all comes too quick. You get fame really quick, therefore you lose fame really quick. You don't have an infrastructure to build things behind it, and you're going to go crazy trying to keep up with that and trying to match that. Like after you put out your first video, it gets 25 million views, what the hell do you do next?
Yeah.
Like that. I think the people that do the best are the ones that grow steadily and sturdily over years. And I'm very happy that I never blew up.
Yeah. And you think that's what managed to maintain that level of being
Yeah.
humble and staying you?
I really I couldn't pinpoint anything else. So I that must be part of it.
Yeah. Well, whatever it is, it's cool. And I think that a lot of youth should look up to you in terms of that around social media for sure. So like a lot of podcasters, I got some kind of finisher questions, just three of
Yeah.
them, that are themed that everyone gets to answer. And someday I'll tie them all together.
Dope.
So if you could leave one piece of advice behind for that next generation or a family member you were leaving, you had to leave one thing behind, what would it be?
Join TikTok. I'm just kidding. No, I would say what I would have told myself. Everything takes 10 times plus longer than what you think it will, and you just gotta stick it out if you love it.
Um, yeah, oh, this is fun. I love this. So what is one thing that you yourself are really focused on learning right now?
Sports card business. I've been holding cards in my hand this entire time. I'm obsessed with it, and I think it's going to be as big, if not bigger, than the sneaker game was in its prime within the next 2 years. And I'm really looking forward to when it hits that point.
Now, just quickly then, in terms of sports cards, is it mostly new cards that are pretty popular as far as that goes? Because I see you opening packs, obviously.
Yeah, it's a combination. I think the new cards are what the kids are mostly into, but then the OGs that have been in the game know that the Michael Jordan rookies are gonna end up being worth the most because people already know how many are out there, whereas some of the newer stuff you don't, and they're always releasing new products and all that. So older cards are definitely safer investments, but you buy, like you see Luka Doncic, for example, who was the rookie of the year last year. His rookies fluctuate hundreds of dollars in a matter of a week, even while they're not playing. It's just, that's how crazy the market can be. It's buying a stock in a player. And I think a lot of companies and startups and tech companies have tried this, creating a stock market for athletes. They're wrong. They can't do it. It already exists. It's sports cards. That's you buying a share of stock in an athlete.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
that's, once that really gets around people's heads, every sports fan is going to be into it. And 50% of people in the world are sports fans. So I just think from a numbers standpoint, it's going to be really big.
Yeah, that's cool. And this one's interesting. A little tough to explain, but it adds value. I'm going to use it as a piece of content for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when we're stuck in our own tunnel vision or in our own projects, sometimes it's hard to think of things that others might think of as good ideas. So if you were to ask me a question that my answering for my audience would add value to them or clarity, like what's a question that you think I could answer? Something you would ask me based off what you know.
That's a good question.
It's meta.
What what's the biggest thing that you've learned from working with a lot of these people who aren't in the best positions? What's the best thing that you've taken away and you would love everybody to know/understand?
Cool. My short version that I already have, like I'll use it. I'll think about it. I always like to think about it, go for a walk and figure it out. But I do have a short answer already. And it's just that we're all the same. Like I go in to work with a 16-year-old who's committed murder. And it's like, it's like we're pretty damn similar. There's like 0.000% of something that's different. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that we're all so alike between races, geography, doesn't matter, socioeconomic status. It's like there's not much different, and then but in the news and in the media and all these things, we quickly judge. But when you get to know people, there's shit that happened to their circumstances, but we're not that different. Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing.
Got it. I like that.
But I'll package it. It'll be a piece of content on its own,
Cool. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's been a pleasure being able to ask you questions. The fact you carved out time in your busy schedule, I appreciate. And
Of course.
if
Thank
there's
you for
any
having me.
way that we end up working together ever in the future, or if nothing else, being able to point kids towards your content is going to add a lot of value. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be the second guest, right?
That's a great question. So it's
Somewhere in
weird.
there. One of the first.
It's weird with podcasts, right? Like, because you record and edit, so you're the third recording.
Got it.
I honestly think you might be the first guest. So,
Wow.
well, and I was talking to Jacob about this because, so the way my content, what the plan is, or what my vision is anyways, which sometimes a little too crazy for people to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why 2020 for me has been clarity, is like, I take Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours and I
Mm-hmm.
want to blow that thing up because I want people to try more often. So
Yes.
I want to show them more like Tim Ferriss. Like, so the number I picked was 200 hours.
Okay.
So I get super vulnerable. I'll go try learning dance for 200 hours. Go try learning
Wow.
how to be a YouTuber for 200 hours. So I was doing filmmaking. I recorded a couple really cool episodes. One with a pretty big YouTuber. And then Corona happened the next week. So I was like, oh,
Wow.
great. So I'm doing online business instead. So
Cool.
for 200 hours, I'll do online business. But I was like, well, YouTube in my basement with online business, like that sucks. So add the podcast. So what I'm going to do is 200 hours will be the YouTube video and the podcast will always align. Point being, right now, the first topic's going to be online business. So you'll probably be up first, like this idea of starting businesses, and then podcasting is going to be the second topic. So the podcasters will come in next.
Cool.
Jacob, and I interviewed a guy, David Speed. He's in the UK. Have you heard Creative Rebels?
I haven't.
They got a cool Instagram account. You should check out their painting and stuff. They're spray painters by trade.
Cool.
But their podcast, at least in Europe, is pretty big, I think. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So yeah,
Awesome.
so you'll be right up there at the beginning, anyways. One of the first.
Cool. Thank you again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And if you ever need anything, you know where I'm at.
Likewise.
All right.
All
Have
right.
a good day.
See you, brother.